In House of the Dragon, Episode 2, Season 2, we saw the aftermath of Blood and Cheese, the return of Seasmoke, the departure of Daemon and Caraxes, brother, first brother, and we hear mention of Daemon the Daring, Alicent's fourth child. In this video, I'll break down the episode and point out all of the Easter eggs, references, and book lore that you might have missed. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. The episode begins with the Red Keep in disarray. In his anger, Aegon destroys Viserys' model of the which symbolizes how Aegon is destroying his father's legacy. Viserys wanted House Targaryen to endure and respect the traditions of the past, to essentially become a second Valyria, but Aegon and his vengeance tears down that legacy, signaling that the peace that Viserys sought after is at an end, and a civil war between House Targaryen is now truly inevitable. Aegon also shouts, "I am the king," which is a callback to Game of Thrones, when Joffrey says the same thing and Tywin responds, "Any man who must say I am the king is no true king." Aemond returns to his chambers to see Blood and Cheese use Maegor's secret tunnels to gain access to his apartments. But Aemond wasn't there, he was out clapping cheeks. This madam was also in Season 1 when Aemond and Cole go searching for Aegon. During that episode, it is made clear that Aemond knew the madam on some level, and it is hinted that he might have lost his virginity to her. Funnily enough, the actress was also Fabian's drama teacher. Back in Aemond's apartment, there is a mural depicting Aegon the Conqueror burning Harrenhal. Next, we see Alicent speaking with Otto. Alicent's necklace, which is a symbol of the Faith of the Seven, is prominently shown. Throughout the episode, she struggles with the guilt of her sins. If she hadn't have been with Criston Cole, he might have been on watch, and perhaps he could have prevented the murder. Her morals have become so warped and twisted. Last season, she condemned Rhaenyra for flaunting the law, but now she does the exact same thing with Cole, and feels like the gods are punishing her for these sins. It is interesting to see that as Alicent grieves, Otto doesn't really know how to comfort her, and later in the episode we see Helena and Aegon grieve, but Alicent herself doesn't know how to comfort her children. Each Hightower generation seems unable to emotionally help each other out. At the small council, Otto looks to make use of the tragedy, and like a true politician looks to put a spin on it. He intends to use the death of the heir as a bit of propaganda. By parading the boy's body through the streets, he hopes to turn the small folk of King's Landing and the High Lords of the realm against Rhaenyra. Upon witnessing the body, one onlooker shouts Rhaenyra the Cruel, likening her to Maegor the Cruel, who was a tyrannical king who did some pretty horrific things. Larys Strong interrupts the meeting to say that he has captured Blood. Blood had tried to escape with the head of Jaehaerys. Remember, he was only paid half of the gold, with the other half to be paid by Daemon upon completion of the task, and the head was to be used as evidence of a job done. Aegon wants to kill Blood, but Otto says he might have valuable information. This conversation comes back into play later in the episode. Aegon grows frustrated and distrusting of the council, and rightly so. Most of them are loyal to Otto. Notice that once he sits down, the remaining members of the council all sit as well, subtly making it clear that it is Otto who truly controls them and not Aegon. Despite Aegon's opposition to the funeral, Otto convinces the rest of them to go through with the plan. After all, it is a great opportunity to turn the realm against Rhaenyra. The funeral is a horrific display. Little Jaehaerys' head has been stitched back onto his body, and just as Otto had hoped, it earns the sympathies of the small folk as they see what Rhaenyra is capable of. Meanwhile, Larys flopping out his interrogation tools is enough to convince Blood to immediately confess. It is clear the Lord Confessor has a dark reputation. Blood says a rat catcher assisted him, but he does not know the man's name. Aegon believes this is more than enough information and kills Blood. Rhaenyra is informed of the assassination and is clearly horrified, but much of the realm and some members of her own small council believe she was responsible. After all, back in Season 1, her and Daemon faked Laenor's death, but as far as the realm is concerned, Rhaenyra had her husband brutally murdered. While these actions made Rhaenyra's enemies fearful of her and Daemon, it also has led to the realm believing that she is capable of kin slaying. While Rhaenyra argues that she didn't do this, Daemon can be seen with that typical shit-eating grin, so Rhaenyra confronts him in private and questions Daemon's loyalty. Does he truly see her as his queen, or has he only been using her to grasp at his stolen inheritance? Daemon was Viserys' heir before Rhaenyra after all, so it is understandable that he hasn't gotten over this just yet. Daemon ultimately storms out and flies off with Caraxes, presumably to Harrenhal. Harrenhal is essentially the center of Westeros and provides a significant strategic vantage point for whoever claims it first. Rhaenyra is then seen playing with her children. Their playhouse is a replica of Dragonstone. Meanwhile, at the Red Keep, Alicent attempts to wash away her guilt and her sins. Criston Cole speaks with Eric, scolding him for having a dirty cloak. The white cloak of the Kingsguard is a symbol of their oath to the crown. However, sleeping with the Queen would be a massive breach of these oaths, and Criston scolding Eric is a way of deflecting his own failures. After all, he has dishonored the cloak more than most. Cole further deflects and blames Eric for not protecting Helaena and Jaehaerys, but Eric says he was protecting the king at the time of the attack and questions where was Cole, implying that maybe Cole was supposed to be the one guarding Helena's chambers, or at the very least, as Lord Commander, he should have ensured one of the other Kingsguard were stationed outside of her room. Cole further questions Eric's loyalties and orders him to disguise himself as his brother and slay Rhaenyra in her own halls. This type of assassination is something no true knight would undertake. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, Aemond is at a brothel, looking like some Dark Souls creature. This woman with silver hair is almost certainly a Targaryen bastard. After all, in Season 1, Daemon and Viserys admitted to frequently visiting the Street of Silk, so it is likely there are plenty of Targaryen bastards running around. Aemond has a bit of a therapy session with the madam. He clings to her in the fetal position as a child would cling to a mother, and given her age, it is clear that Aemond has some underlying mummy issues. Next we see Hugh Hammer again, the smith from last episode. The scene demonstrates that while the highborn squabble with their issues, it is the small folk who truly suffer. This sentiment was echoed by the madam in the previous scene. As the series goes on, the small folk will play a bigger and bigger role as they continue to be crushed under the Targaryen civil war. Given Hugh's hair color, you can probably take a guess at why he will be important later. On Driftmark, we meet Adam of Hull, the brother to Alan who we met last episode. Adam says that Corlys owes the brothers, and later we see Adam watching Seasmoke, the mount of Laenor Velaryon, flying overhead. Like Hugh, keep an eye on these two as they have a big part to play in the future of the series. Rhaenyra then reads some scrolls looking to the wisdom of the past, just as her father Viserys would have. In the book, there is an image of Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives Visenya and Rhaenys. On the next page, we see Visenya mounted on Vhagar. Rhaenyra speaks with Mysaria, who was once Daemon's lover back in Season 1. However, Mysaria came to the realization that she was just a tool in Daemon's eyes, to be used to anger his brother and further his line, which is exactly how Rhaenyra feels at the moment. Daemon has been using her as a tool to get closer to the throne he believes was stolen from him. It is clear from this scene that in Rhaenyra's eyes, Daemon views all women the same, as he treats her and Mysaria the exact same way, despite the difference in their station. Back at the Red Keep, we see Cheese's dog from last episode, looking up at his master who has been hanged, along with every other ratcatcher in King's Landing. Blood confessed that a ratcatcher helped him enter the Red Keep, so Aegon had them all killed, but by doing so he angered the small folk and has undone all of the support that he gained from Otto's funeral ploy. This further demonstrates Aegon's inability to understand the importance of politics and how his actions have far-reaching consequences. If Aegon had have kept blood alive, perhaps he could have identified Cheese, but Aegon's impulses got the better of him. To be fair, it doesn't seem like Alicent, Otto, or Viserys took any interest in teaching Aegon how to rule. Otto then confronts Aegon about his mistakes, but Aegon is done listening to old men and their counsel, and believes in decisive action. While Otto has spent decades trying to get Aegon onto the throne, it is ironic that once he achieves that goal, he is removed as hand and dismissed. Criston Cole is then made hand, and Aegon says, "My new hand will be a steel fist," which is a line lifted straight from the books. On Dragonstone, Mysaria sees Aarax arrive and pauses. She will almost certainly stay on Dragonstone to aid Rhaenyra, and might have even tipped off Eric about his twins' arrival. We then see Aarax walking through Dragonstone to slay Rhaenyra in her chambers, but before he can do so, he is interrupted by his twin. The brothers then fight it out. Although it is hard to tell who won, I believe Aarax, who is loyal to Queen Rhaenyra, is the ultimate victor. But in Westeros, kinslaying is a sin, and although he has upheld his duty to his queen, in his grief he cannot live after having killed his own brother, so he Tommans himself in brutal fashion. The brothers' duel is kind of like a mini Dance of the Dragons. When a family goes to war with itself, there can be no true winner, likely foreshadowing the eventual outcome of the oncoming civil war. In the final scenes, Alicent wears a new necklace, having ditched the seven-pointed one of her religion. Otto mentions Alicent's fourth child, Daemon. Otto hopes to return to Old Town and influence Daemon to be a more suitable ruler than Aegon or Aemond. After all, Daemon is now third in line to the Iron Throne. Daemon also has a dragon of his own named Tessarion, and the pair play a big role in the books. Alicent seeks comfort in Otto and wishes to confess her sins to him, but being emotionally stunted, Otto stops her. His inability to show emotion is then immediately reflected in Alicent, who sees her own son Aegon crying, but like her father, she fails to comfort her kin. Instead, she meets up with Criston Cole and embraces the sin.